Hello. Last week it was our first week where we were able to get together in person, and it went really well, and I really feel like I underestimated how powerful that was going to be for us, and so it was awesome to be able to gather together, and we totally understand that not everybody can be there right now, and that's okay, and I hope that these videos are helping you to stay connected. And so as we move forward into the next coming weeks, I want you to know that you can always go to our website too. We do have stuff on Facebook, but we also put our messages and different things online, and keep up with communication there on our website. And it's www.faithmissionarychurch.org, and so you can go there anytime, and there's opportunities to give online and different things. And so we'd love for you to check that out. And so as we move forward into this week, last week we celebrated Mother's Day, and it was great. And this week I wanted to talk a little bit about those times. Sometimes we have those times in life where, we're going on one road, and then all of a sudden something happens, and boom, we're over here. And it's just like everything was going along normal, and you get that phone call, and now all of a sudden your life is going in a different direction. Those moments for us when calm, turns into chaos. I mean, has that ever happened to you? I mean, in a way, right, it's happening to all of us right now as things are kind of turned upside down a little bit for us. But there have certainly, right, been more than a few times for us in our lives when we went from calm to chaos in less than 2 seconds. I remember exactly where I was on Highway 50, right, when we got the call that Cora's mom had suffered a heart attack. I think about it every time I drive by that spot. I mean, calm to chaos in a second. I mean, have you ever pressed the wrong button after a whole lot of work? Maybe something you were doing for school, you're writing a paper, or you were at work and you put a lot of effort and time into this, and you hit the wrong button and you deleted it, right? Like calm to chaos, just like that, for sure. Or maybe you got a call from the doctor with some unexpected results, and everything changed in an instant, right? Goodbye, calm, hello, chaos. Or maybe your boss, right, he's called you in and said, hey, we got to make some cuts. Do you know what I mean? That takes you from calm to all the way over here to craziness in a second. Or maybe your kid has walked in holding a piece of your car, or your wife, like has happened to me, a piece of your car, and asking about your insurance coverage, right? One minute you're going this way, the next you're going another way, right? It happens. And I think we can all relate to that. I mean, if you can relate to that, then you know that life can go from peace to craziness in a matter of moments. And there aren't any warnings, and there aren't any announcements or any kind of preparation for that, right? And that reaction, that response to that is a sense of peace, or it's a sense of panic. And so I just want to spend some time talking today just a little bit about a day in Jesus's life when calm could have certainly become panic. And it really has everything wrapped up into one day. It begins with heartbreaking news, and people then wanting to take him down, and then it's followed by everybody kind of pulling at him and wanting something for him, and then it's filled with all of these distractions and frustrating disciples, and this battle to kind of maybe keep from just kind of going with the flow or taking the easy road. And really in about 24 hours, Jesus goes from up on the mountaintop to the lowest part of the valley. And you could really, you could make the case that this is the second most stressful day of his life. And so, when you take a look at how this day kind of unfolds, you really wonder to yourself, how did he keep from snapping? Because somehow, he stays steady and he remains calm. And even as the issues, they keep building, Jesus doesn't blow up or run away. In fact, he does the exact opposite. He begins to serve people. He begins to thank God, and he makes calm decisions. And so I think this is a incredibly good time, right, for us to take a look at this because we're feeling that kind of pressure, right? We're feeling that tension. It doesn't take much right now to get us to snap. And so we need to pay attention to how it is that we are viewing the people around us, how we are seeing our problems, and I think that Jesus has given us a perfect example to follow when it comes to that. And so if we could just honestly, if we could just download, right, the principles that are modeled by Jesus and then upload them into our lives, right, into our everyday list of demands and decisions that we have to make, would be amazing. And he has given us the tools to do that. And so we need to pay attention to this story, I think, and observe God under pressure. And so we need to take a look at his actions. We need to hear his words. We need to see his choices. And we need to check out what it is that we can learn. And so let's jump into this story, okay? So this is a day, right, that's for sure, again, probably the second most stressful day of Jesus' life. At least that's recorded for us in Scripture, aside from his crucifixion. But by the end of the day, he experiences some stuff, right, that would make us cry, right? It would make us hide. It would make us scream. It would make us cuss. It would make us yell out to the Lord, and it would fill us with probably some doubt. Go from calm to chaos, right? From peace to confusion. And so within moments, his world is flipped upside down. But the beautiful thing is that woven into this story is something that stands out to us today. Because in this story, there is one lesson that brings us comfort and brings us hope and brings us peace. And you've heard it before, but you might not remember. And I want you to look closely, and I want you to be reminded of it. And it's this. It's that Jesus knows how you feel. He knows how you feel. And so if you've ever had a day in which you have been just overloaded, right, by everyone's demands, if you have ever been tossed up and down, right, by the seas of life, right, 1 minute it's up with celebration and excitement, the next it is down, and you're in mourning or sadness. If you have ever wondered if God in heaven can relate to you here on earth, then I want you to read and reread, right, about this crazy, rough day in the life of Jesus. And I hope that it brings you a sense of hope this morning. Right? That Jesus knows how you feel. And so he begins this day. He starts out with the news that his cousin, his close friend, John the Baptist, had been killed. And you can imagine, right? You're losing the one person, right, who knows you better than anybody else, and you can feel what Jesus is feeling, right? His world is starting to spin, and he's just leveled by this news. And that wasn't the only thing that he heard that morning, because that news of John's death also came with a message for Jesus himself, that same Herod who took John's life was interested in taking his. And so with the news of John's death and his own life now being threatened, Jesus, he decides, I'm going to get away for a little bit. And so it says in Scripture that when Jesus heard what had happened, that he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. But before he can get off, before he can go, his disciples show up. And the Gospel of Mark states that the apostles, they gathered around Jesus and they reported to him all that they had done and taught. And so that you can imagine, right? They come flying in the door and they're super excited about all that they had been accomplishing, and because Jesus had sent them out to preach the gospel, and all kinds of awesome stuff was going on, and people were repenting and they were turning to the Lord, and people were being forgiven and healed and restored. I mean, can you picture it? Just the explosion of excitement. these guys are getting back together, and they're all pumped up, right, about their experiences, and they're excited to share their stories together. And these 12 students are reunited with their beloved teacher, and they just want they want to tell him the stories about Peter, healing a lame man, or John telling a crowd, telling about a crowd that he taught, or Andrew talking about a guy that was restored, or James telling Jesus how the crowds followed him wherever he went, and Matthew, talking about this amazing moment when this blind woman was healed. I mean, you can just see it. And you got to remember, these are ordinary guys. Like they haven't seen this, haven't experienced this before, and they aren't teachers or scholars or kings or saints, right? They are fishermen and tax collectors, common guys, right? Like who by God's power had experienced some incredible things. And so you can feel it, right? The emotions switch in the room. In 1 minute, Jesus' heart is going from total sadness, right, to jumping up and down, celebrating. And so, and all of this celebration came with an extra surprise as well, because guess who's following, all of the disciples as they're trying to find out where they came from, and who's taught them to do these things, and who's the guy behind the story, and it's Jesus, and they're looking for him. So about 5,000 men plus women and children show up, which is a crowd that's estimated to be about 25,000. And so they surround Jesus, and each of them, they want to know, right, how is he empowering these guys to do such awesome things? And so what had been calm, right, was now chaos. And I can tell you this, right? I'm a pastor, and I'm a dad, and I'm a husband, and I'm a coach, and I'm a school board member. I know exactly what it is like to have people pulling at you in different directions, or needing someone to talk to or complain to, or have it being calm one moment and crazy the next. And I know what it's like to jump from one thing to the next and to the next, and then to the thing after that, just trying to keep up with it all. But 25,000 people, right? That's like Nebraska City all at once, right? And it comes at such a hard time for him. He was trying to get away, right? He was getting ready to take a little bit of a break, and then and just get away somewhere quiet, and then boom, right? Everything explodes. Isn't that how it always seems to happen? So that, this morning, had been crazy for Jesus. I mean, first he's grieving over the death of his dear friend and relative, and then his life is threatened, and then he's celebrating the return of his friends, and then he's nearly overrun by a giant crowd of people all wanting something from him. And so maybe you're beginning to see, right, why this is a pretty stressful day for Jesus. And truth is, it's far from over. And so Jesus, he decides, he's like, I got to go forward with my original plan. He wants to take his disciples to this quiet place where they can just go rest, gather their thoughts, spend some time together. And so he shouts to his guys, right, over the crowd. He's like, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. And so they hop into a boat and they take off. And so for a few, right, precious, amazing moments, it's calm again. And so it wasn't that he didn't want to be around that crowd of people. It's just that he needed some space. He needed a few hours alone, just a little bit of a break, a retreat, some time to pray, some time to think, right? Some time to cry, right? A time without crowds or demands. I'm just going to have a campfire with my boys, right? And some moments with the people that I love. But here's the thing, the crowd, they can wait till tomorrow, right? Well, it turns out they couldn't. They weren't interested in waiting around, but it says this. It says that the crowd learned about where he was going, and they followed him. Of course, right? And so they decide to take this 6-mile walk around the corner of the Sea of Galilee. And so when Jesus got to the other side, he thought that he was going to get this retreat with his friends, but instead, he's greeted with the roar of the crowd again. surprise, here we are. And you can add then to the list of sadness and danger and excitement and craziness the word interruption. Jesus's plans are interrupted. And so what he had in mind for his day and what the people have in mind for his day were two different things. And so what Jesus wants and what Jesus gets are not the same. Certainly that sounds familiar to us, right? We experience that all the time. I mean, have you ever wanted some sleep but got instead a crying baby? Right? Or have you ever wanted to catch up at the office but got even further behind? Or maybe you've wanted to rest that one Saturday, but you ended up helping your friend move instead. We know what that's like, right? Interruptions. But here's the good news, right? The great news is that it happened to Jesus too. In fact, right, this is a great time for us to stop and take notice to this, because it just describes perfectly that Jesus knows how we feel. So we can remember that, right? The next time that our world goes from calm to chaos, right? From plans to interruptions. Those moments where all of a sudden your heart starts beating faster. You're like, oh, was this unexpected? You know what I mean? And all of a sudden your Apple Watch buzzes and it reminds you to breathe. I want you to know that he's been there. That his eyes have looked tired. That his heart has ached, right? That he has had to go to work not feeling great. That he's been up late and gotten up early, right? That he knows how you feel. And I think that sometimes we just have trouble believing that, right? It's easy for us to believe that Jesus knows what it means to go through the big stuff, right? Like that he wrestled with grief or he wrestled with fear. But most of us can accept that. But can God relate to the hassles and the frustrations, right? Those things in our daily lives? For some reason, that's just harder for us to take in, right? And maybe that's why I believe that is why pieces of this day are recorded in all of the gospel accounts. I mean, no other event other than the crucifixion is told by all four gospel writers. Not his baptism, not his temptation, not even his birth. But all four writers talk about this day. And so it's as if, as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right, knew that we were going to wonder if God really understands. And so they are telling us the same story, that Jesus knows how you feel. He's been there. He's been there. I remember teaching Brennan how to play basketball, for example. Do you know what I mean? And I would show him how to shoot, and then he would shoot, and it would come up just a little bit short, and he'd get frustrated, and we'd keep going. And then finally he'd get frustrated enough, he'd look at me and be like, it's easy for you up there, but you know what I mean? It's harder for me down here. And I think that sometimes we feel that way about God. We think, oh yeah, you know what I mean? You're God. You don't know how it is to struggle or feel this stress or this pain or this hurt. It's easy for you to be up there, but here I am down here. And I want you to know that that's not true about him. That there are certainly a lot of lessons that we can learn from Jesus about this day and about stress, but we need to begin with this one, that God understands how you feel. And it says in Hebrews, right, chapter 4, verse 15, you might know it, that Jesus, this great high priest with ready access to God, he doesn't let anything slip through his fingers, right? We don't have a God who is out of touch with our reality, that he's been through weakness and he's been through testing and he's experienced it all but sin. And really it's like, again, the writer of Hebrews knows what we want to argue about. And that's why his words are super direct, right? He says he himself, not an angel, right? Not an ambassador, but Jesus himself, he shared fully. Not a little bit, not parts of it, not partially, not some of it, not most of the way, but entirely, right? Jesus shared fully in all of our experiences, every hurt, every heartache, all of the stresses, and all of the strains. No exceptions, no substitutes. Why? Why is because so he could sympathize with us, right? So he can walk with us in all of our weaknesses, not just the big ones, but even the little ones. Those frustrating interruptions, those things that pop into our lives, right? He knows. You know, Max Lucado says it this way. He says, in talking about this, he says a politician can put on a hard hat and enter the factory like he is one of the employees. And a social worker can go into the inner city and spend the night on the streets with the homeless. And a general can walk into the mess hall and sit down with the soldiers like he's one of the enlisted men. And all three of those want to communicate the same message that, hey, I identify with you. I can understand, right? I can relate. But there's one problem with that. The factory employees know that the politician's hard hat's going to come off as soon as the TV crew is gone. The homeless know that the social worker has a warm bed tomorrow night to sleep in, right? And all of the soldiers are well aware that for every time the general sits down and eats in the mess hall, he's going to eat dozens of times in the officers' quarters, right? And so as much as they're trying, these well-meaning professionals don't really understand, because their participation is just partial. But that's not how it is with God. Jesus' participation, right, is complete. It's full, right? And so the writer of Hebrews states, right, with extra clarity that Jesus shared fully in our experience. And again, that's just, it's hard for us because sometimes we want a shiny stained glass God, right? And there's something safe about a God who never had to struggle. There's something awesome about a God who never felt pain. And there's something majestic about a God who didn't scrape his knee. But there's also something disconnected about a God who can't relate to what you and I feel. And so every page of the gospel tells us this truth, that God knows you. He knows exactly how you feel, and he understands what you are walking through. And so from the funeral, right, to the factory, to the frustration of a demanding schedule, Jesus understands. And so when you tell God that you're at the end of your rope, he knows exactly what you mean. And so when you're loaded up with more work than you can handle, he understands. And when your plans get interrupted by people who have other plans, he's like, yes, I get it. Because he has been there and he knows how you feel. And so I wanted to spend some time today just laying that out in front of you. Because I feel like sometimes we get caught up in our everyday things and we think that we're alone in it and that nobody understands and nobody feels the same way we do. Nobody is doing the same things we are. But I just want you to know it's just not true. You are not alone. You are never alone. And that the God of all creation stepped directly into our world and experienced all that we've experienced and did it without sinning, and has given us an amazing example to follow. But he's also given us a perspective that he knows it, he understands it, he gets it. And so we can cry out to him in frustration. We can go to him in pain and hurt and fear, and know and trust that he totally gets where we're coming from. And that gives me a sense of hope. That gives me a sense of peace, right? That helps me understand, right, just exactly how much God loves me. And so again, I'm excited to have this time with you today, and I look forward to seeing you in person if we can. If not, we'd love to connect with you in other ways. And so we miss you and we love you, and we'll see you next week.